verse number 8. And Bhagavan sort of at the end of telling him that, okay, I'll show you at one place because that is what he wanted to see. I mean, it's very difficult for a common person to move around and then sort of, see the whole Vishwa as such. And so Bhagavan sort of is compassionate and he's telling Arjuna that, okay, if that is what you want, you try and sort of try to see my Rupa, my Vishwarupa at one place. So you don't have to struggle so much. That's what Bhagavan says. Nana vidhani divyani nana varna kritini cha pasyad pasya adityanavasan rudran asvino marutastatha vahunyadrishtapurvani pasya saryani bharata ihikastham. That is what Bhagavan is promising. You see all that at one place at one time, and asakrit at one time. Jagat Krishnam pasya pasyadya. Adya means tatkala at the same time. Sacharacharam, Jada and Jiva, the whole Varga, the whole universe. Mama Dehe Gudakesha, Yacha Anyad Drashtumichasi, including that in case you are interested to know even what's going to happen to your future and you had a bit of doubt whether you're going to win or lose. You can see all that. You can see my Vishwarupa plus your future, all of it. So he sort of becomes a Trikaladarshi at one time, at one go. And why he's saying? Because he's Yogeshwaram. Notaman sakyase drashtum ananeva swachakshusha divyam dadat mite chakshuhu pasyame yogam aishwaram. Because with your naked eyes, with your limited, object, your tools of perception, your means of perception which God has given you, your senses, with that you will not be able to see me. So Bhagavan is telling you, I am giving you that extra sensory perceptual ability, that jnana chakshu he gives them. And then who is the one who is narrating? In Bhagavad Gita, there are three people basically speaking. There's one guy is Arjuna who is asking questions. Bhagavan is answering questions. And there is a person who gives some introduction, who is Sanjaya, who is narrating Bhagavad Gita. He's narrating whole of Mahabharata to Dhritarashtra. He wanted to see, there were no television sets those days. So Sanjay was given the Divya Drushti to sit and narrate what's happening there to Dhritarashtra. Now, he is in fact the first beneficiaries of the Jnana Chakyu with God's grace. Because he can see without coming to the war field, he can see everything that is happening and then relate the story to Dhritarashtra. Because if Sanjay did not have those pair of Divya Drishtis, whatever Arjuna saw, he will not be able to see. Just try to understand what I'm trying to see. So you have night goggles. Okay, so I give you night goggles, and this is a night time, and you are being able to see anything in the dark. And we are having a conversation. I'm saying, please see these things. And next to the Ganges, it's a dark night, and you can see things. Now, if there's someone else is watching, can he see that? No, because he doesn't have those night goggles. So he can only hear and infer what you're seeing. He cannot directly see. However, Sanjay is already having that Divya Chakshu, and therefore he can not only hear what Bhagavan says and what Arjuna says, but also can see what Arjuna can see, which all other people who are there, right there in Kurukshetra, ready to fight a war, don't have any access to. They're just thinking some conversation is going on, but they don't have access to Bhagavan's Vishwarupa because that is a kripa which is reserved for an advanced student of Vedanta, which is Arjuna. Okay, so now Sanjay starts to sort of give an introduction to this new Adhyaya from verse number 9 till verse number 14. Okay, in these 6 verses. Sanjay Uvacha Eva Muktva Tato Rajan Mahayogeshwaro Harihi Darsayamasa Parthaya Paramam Rupamaishwaram. So, Evam Uktva, Bhagavan having said this, that I'm giving you a pair of magical eyes, Divya Drishti, Eva Muktva, having said this, Tataha, He Rajan, He Dhritarashtra, Mahayogeshwara. He is the greatest among all the Yogeshwaras. If there are any yogis who have some subtle perceptual abilities, the ability to know, the ability to influence situations because of yoga siddhis, He is supreme among all those yogic powers and people with those powers. And who is he? Harihi, Lord Krishna. Darsayamasa, he showed. He showed it to Parthaya. Directed is the fourth case. Partha is Prithi Raja's son, so he's in a Prithi Vansaja. Parthaya Paramam. What did he show? Paramam Rupam Aishwaram. His divine Rupa, his divine presence. Because normally we cannot access it. Let's look at how Sankara says, because these 6 verses are relatively easy except the last one, where there is a bit of difficult commentary by Madhusudana. We'll try to progress as much as we can. So what Sankaracharya says, evam tam yathokta prakarena uktva. Having said this, given some guidance, like a tourist guide gives you a certain introduction to you before he shows you something. Bhagavan is already trying to motivate Arjuna to be a little more careful and have all his attention focused on this whole difficult thing he's going to undergo of seeing the Vishwarupa. He shouldn't get frightened, and he should have his ears and eyes open. He should not be drowsy. He should be very attentive, because all that Bhagavan has told him about his vibhutis and his powers and everything is going to reveal it to him. Yathokta prakarana uktva tataha anantaram rajan dhritarashtra. So he's addressing it to, hey Dhritarashtra. Mahayogeshwara, Mahancha asau Yogeshwarasya. What is Yogeshwara? That is Vigraha. He's saying Samasyamana pada. Mahayogeshwara, Mahancha asau Yogeshwarasya. So somebody who is great, and he's also the Lord of all the yogis. Hari Narayana Darsayamasa. That is Harihi, which means Narayana. He showed to whom? Darsitavan. Darsayamasa means, so he showed him Parthaya. Prithasutaya. So he's Prithi's son, he shows it to him. Paramam Rupam, Vishwarupam Aishwaram. He shows his Vishwarupa to him. Madhusudana will be saying something, but these are simple ones. We will not dwell too much because there is no philosophy here. It's mostly alankarika, some ritualistic interpretations. So Bhagavan Arjunaya Divyam Rupam Darshitavan. Bhagavan shows his Divya Rupa, his divine presence to Arjuna. Sacha Tadrishtva Vismaya Vishto Bhagavantam Vigyapitavan Iti imam vrittantam eva uktva ityadivihi sarvihi slokehi dhritarashram prati Sanjay uvacha. Now Arjuna obviously is going to be surprised and will be overtaken by a sense of wonder, a sense of hallucination. Because if you are actually face to face with the Lord, can you imagine? That's something we have never experienced, and therefore he's going to undergo that splendid experience, not dramatic, but splendid, transformative, cathartic, whatever you call. So now Sanjay, in the next 6 verses, he's going to talk to Dhritarashtra, telling what happened during Vishwarupa Darshana. Evam iti. Evam na to mam sakyase rupam na prakriti na chakshusha. Sorry. Evam na to mam sakyase drashtum anena. So Bhagavan said, with your eyes you cannot see me. Anena chakshusa ato divyam dadami me chakshu. Therefore I'm giving you divya chakshus. Chakshu ityukta. Bhagavan having said that, tataha divya chakshu pradadanat anantaram. He first gave him the divya chakshu. That is the first thing he did. Anantaram. Hey Rajan Dhritarashtra. Sanjay is telling, Stiro bhava sravanaya. Okay, my lord, now listen to me. Because Dhritarashtra had always a lot of doubt about who is this Krishna and whether he's actually going to win. Is he so powerful? He had a lot of human doubts about Bhagavan. So he's saying, Stiro bhava. Now be quiet. Listen to the story. Mahan sarvostishtachaso yogeshwarascha iti maha yogeshwara haribhaktanam sarva klesa pahari. Who is he? Maha Yogeshwara. Why is called Yogeshwara? He has this yogic power. Some bhaktas also call him Papachura. He steals the sins of his devotees. And here, all the traumas, the agonies, the pain, Hari Bhaktanam, Sarva Klesa Apahari. He steals all your klesas. Now you know that when you are in problem, whose name to take. Because he's a Sarva Klesa Apahari Bhagavan, Darsana Ayogyam Api. He doesn't deserve to see Bhagavan. And yet, Arjuna, Darsayamasa, he shows him, Parthaya, Ekanta Bhaktaya Paramam Divyam Rupam Aishwaram. Why does he show it to him? Because he's the dearest student of Lord Krishna. Okay, he's the dearest student, and therefore Bhagwan shows it to him. The next verse. Aneka Vaktra Nayanam Aneka Adbhuta Darsanam Aneka Vaktra Nayanam Aneka Adbhuta Darsanam Aneka Divyabharanam Divyaneko Yudham Anek Vaktra Nayana. Vaktra is face, Nayana is eyes. Multiple. You have seen the picture of Vishwarupa. That's an imaginary thing. That is not how Lord Krishna appeared. This is just a metaphoric presentation. This is how we fantasize Lord Krishna must have presented himself to Arjuna. We have no idea. So he's saying Aneka Vaktra. He has several heads, several faces, and Aneka Nayanam, and different eyes, Aneka Adbhuta Darsanam. And all this is full of, wonder, very surprising. Aneka Divya Bharanam, and he wears a lot of dresses, different kind of, abharanas, lot of alankaras, jewelry, and these are all Divya, Alohika, not very Prakrita. We haven't seen them every day. Divyan Aneka Udyata Ayudham. And then he has millions of hands, let's imagine. And these millions of hands are carrying millions of weapons. Why is he talking like this? Why is the verse like this? The verse is essentially telling the unlimited power and beauty of the Lord. That is what this verse is indicating. If you look at Sankaracharya, Aneka iti, Aneka Vaktra Nayanam, Anekani Vaktrani Nayanani cha Yasminurupe. What is this Aneka Vaktra Nayana? It means a body or this personality in which there are multiple faces, innumerable faces, and innumerable, every face will have eyes, innumerable eyes. Yasun Rupe Tad Aneka Vaktra Nayanam. That face you can address is a Samastapada Aneka Vaktra Nayanam. Aneka Adbhuta Darsanam, Aneka Anya Adbhutani Vismaya Bismapakani Darsanani Yasmin Rupe Tad Aneka Adbhuta Darsanam. And there are myriad things in that appearance which will drive into a sense of wonder. Surprising. You get flabbergasted because you haven't seen. There is nothing Lokika about it. So you become Vishmita. You really utterly surprised. And then he says, Tatha Aneka Divyabharanam Anekani Divyani Abharanani. Lot of dresses, lot of alankars, lot of jewelries. Yasmin Tad Aneka Divyabharanam Tatha Divya Aneka Udyata Ayudham. And you have a lot of weapons in your hands ready to be fired. It's like he's holding millions of machine guns and missiles and arrows and bows and swords and everything ready to go. That sort of a situation. Ayudham Divyan. Darsayamasa iti urvena sambandha. So Bhagavan shows it to him. That is how he's mentioning. If you look at Madhusudana, what is it? Tadevam rupam visinasti. That rupa of Bhagavan now in the next verse Sanjaya narrates. Anekani vaktrani nayanani cha yasmin rupe. Same as Sankaracharya. Different faces, different eyes. Anekanam adbhutanam vismay hetunam darsanam yasmin. And then there are multiple sources of wonder. It's not one thing which is surprising, but several things that you see which are alokika. That kind of rupa is saying Anekani, Divyani, Avaranani, Bhushanani, Yasmin, and lots of jewelries and dresses and stuff like that is very. Now, there's one, caution here. We should not use our human brain to sort of infer what you would be looking like. A lot of people do that. I mean, all of us have done it as children. I have done it myself. Will he be wearing golden color? Now, I love blue, so I will say, no, he'll be wearing a lot of blue silk saris or silk dhotis or kurtas, paisma, or maybe jackets, depending on your fantasies. You can just attribute it to Lord Krishna. But actually, we don't know what Arjuna saw because these are sentences only. And they only capture a very limited aspect of that infinite reality. Here you can also philosophically interpret that Divya Avarana, is it the physical dress? Because he has already mentioned Divya. That means this is not Laukika Vyavaharagata Darshana, that we see that kurta, pajama, whatever. Not like that. It's essentially talking about an extremely surprising, extremely something which the rational mind cannot grasp, that sort of a manifestation of the divine presence. That is what is said. So the total literal translations which traditional scholars will try to explain in their own language may not be very exciting beyond a point. In a theological way, it's all okay. But in a philosophical way, what we need to pay attention to is what does it mean? Why such a description? The description essentially says that you can never grasp the divine presence in all its expansive beauty and power. We can never grasp it. What it will look like, what you will pass through, will remain unique to you. You cannot even describe it properly to anyone else. So he's trying to do it, and it will never be perfect. That is what I'm trying to say, that we need not be too obsessed with the literal translation of that particular experience by Sanjay to Dhritarashtra as an objective description. These are metaphorical in a way. Anekani divyani avarnani bhushanani jasmin. Divyani anekani adbhutani ayudhani, and there are different kinds of adbhuta which you haven't seen before. Ayudhani astrani yasmin tat tatha rupam. So he has a lot of heads, a lot of eyes, uh, different kinds of dresses, and different kind of weapons in his hands. Then verse number 11. Dibya malyambaram dharam dibya gandhanulepanam sarvasaryamayam deva manantam visvato mukham. And then he also says that Arjuna is now shown by the Lord what? Dibya malambaram dharam. So Dibya mala, lots of these bead these malas, necklaces, different kinds of necklaces of flowers, of gold, of diamonds, and jewelry. These are my fantasies or your fantasies. He just mentioned Dibya, which means Alaukika. What he's exactly wearing on his neck, we don't know. These are descriptions. And Ambaradharam, and he's wearing different kind of dresses. Dibya Gandhanulepanam. And then there is, look at it, that Arjuna is sitting far away, right? He can see it with Dibya Drishti. Was he given a pair of Dibya also Nasaputa that he can smell? We don't know. That is not described anyway. Now he's talking about Dibya Gandhanulepanam. So you have to just take it as face value, because yogic power he was given only to see. Obviously, he can hear also. So can we also presume that he had all the five indriyas which are Divya? That he can also hear. Obviously, that he had Divya, so that he could hear from a distance. He can see. These two I can understand. Can he also feel and touch from a distance? We don't know. But it seems that he can also smell. It seems Divya Gandhanulepanam, that he's sort of he's wearing different kind of perfumes. Sarvasarya Mayam Devam. And then that Deva, Bhagavan shows it to him. Here is one intelligent thing you have to mark, that the Saguna Sakara Rupa, which is Vasudeva, which is a Simita Laukika Rupa, which is a typical appearance of God, as we generally fantasize in literature about how God looks like. Beautiful body, bluish skin, large eyes, always smiling, which you see in calendar art. Here, Bhagavan shows this Rupa, and then he is objectifying this divine presence. He doesn't say Bhagavan shows himself. Krishna is showing himself. He doesn't say that. He's saying Bhagavan is showing his appearance, and this appearance he is separating from Bhagavan. Why? He shows him a bag, he shows him a car, he can show him a bike. How can he show his own Rupa? Because he himself is that, isn't it? So essentially, this whole Vedantic secret is coming here, that Bhagavan's appearance is not Bhagavan. This appearance is his creation, this is his Leela, and he is introducing Arjuna to this Vishwatma Rupa, this Vishwato Mukham. So he is kind of introducing Arjuna to his universal, his complex, his multifarious appearance. Okay, and this appearance is not Bhagavan. This appearance is as part of his game. He's introducing him into his magical appearance, and he's different. That is obviously clear because he's saying Krishna shows to Arjuna his Vishwarupa. This Vishwarupa has been kind of delineated as an objective thing about which Sanjay can talk as if it's just an object of perception. Okay, so there are two things here. This is not aparokya anubhuti like in Vedanta that you directly experience it yourself, but something which which you see outside yourself. That means dheya rupa. That is point number one. There is a bit of dvaita here. Bhagavan is showing certain appearance of him. Bhagavan Swayam is not different from our consciousness. We don't need eyes to have that Ishvara Darshana because we are part of that. That is the Satchidananda Rupa. Here, Arjuna is very curious. He wants to do meditation. He wants to have that Kritartha Bhava, and therefore Bhagavan is compassionate. He's showing his Vishwarupa. This is one interesting thing from the slokas. I hope you mark this language. Divya Malambaram Dharam, Divya Gandhanulepanam, Sarvasharya Mayam Devam Anantam Vishwato Mukham. Bhagavan is showing him the Devata, that is his Vishwarupa. Okay, that is how it is described. Let's look at Sankaracharya. Abhyakta Rupavantam Bhagavantam Prakaranantara Visinasti Kincha iti. So, sorry, let's go to Sankaracharya. So, Aneka iti, okay, Aneka Bhaktu we have finished. Now we are going to the 11th verse. Kincha. Then Sankaracharya starts Divya iti. Divya Malambaradharam Divyani Malyani Pushpani Ambarani. So he's wearing a lot of flower necklaces or garlands, necklaces. Pushpani Ambarani Vastrani cha Dhriyante. He's carrying them. Yena Ishwarena. He's showing that Vishwa Devata, Vishwarupa, one Deva, who is that Ishwara who is carrying this Divya Malam Baradharam. He's carrying all that. Divya Gandhanulepanam. Divyam Gandhanulepan Yasyatam. The person who is sort of painted with, pasted with, smeared with, sprinkled with a lot of perfumes, like sandalwood oil or whatever. He's kind of sprinkled with a lot of perfumes. Sarvasarya Mayam, Sarvasarya Prayam. Okay, so he's kind of as if he's embodying all wonders in himself. Devam Anantam, it's infinite because he has already mentioned number, it's innumerable heads and eyes and weapons and hands and stuff like that. Nasti Anta Asti iti Ananta Ananta Tam. He's seeing that there is no end to it. He's the Ananta Rupa, Vishwato Mukham, Sarvato Mukham. Is complete multiple faces. Sarva Bhutatma Tvat Tam, because he's Sarvatma Bhut, because everything, all the jivas, all the animals, of the plants and everything that you see, Jada or Chetana, he is the cause of it, and therefore he is able to manifest, carrying all of them in one body. Now, this Vishwato Mukham, if you remember, that Bhagavan has earlier, if you go back to chapter 10, do you remember in one particular verse, Bhagavan, in the verse number 33 had Akhyaranam Omkarosmi Dvandvaha Samasikaschaja Ahameva Kshaya Kalo Dhataham Vishwato Mukhaha. I am the Dhata, sustainer of this whole world. I carry it, and I'm Sarvatmaka. Why did he mention it? Because earlier he has mentioned that some people can meditate on me as one, okay, is Nirupadhika, they are Gyanis, or Sopadhika, Sarveshwara, they meditate on me, or they also meditate as different devatas or as multiple gods and goddesses. And that is in tune with this word Vishwato Mukham. Because I can be in any form. Okay, so you can also worship me in any form and there is no problem. That is what Bhagavan. So there is a correlation between different verses. And here Bhagavan is immediately telling him that, okay, see this particular, that Vishwarupa, you have a look at it. Okay. So devam anantam nasti anto asti iti anantah tam vishwadomukam sarvadomukam sarvabhutatmatvat tam darshayamasa arjuna dadarsha iti. Okay, va adriyate adhyarite. So you can do adhyahara. So this is Bhagavan gives him that blessing with which he can actually see Bhagavan at one place, all his Divya Rupas. That is what Shankaracharya explains. And Madhusudana will be a little here and there. Nothing. Divyani, Malyani, Pushpamayani, Ratnamayani cha tatha, Divyani, Ambarani, Vastrani cha Dhriyante yena. Tad Divya Malambara Dharam. This is again same as what Shankaracharya says. He is repeating it. Divyo Gandho Asya iti Divya Gandha Tat Anulepan Jasya Tat. He has that divine smell, isn't it? He's a person, obviously. So these are human imaginations in a way that what God will be like. Obviously, he's not going to smell bad, right? So he's sort of perfume, he's Divya, and everything is attributed to him in a way. Yasya Tat. And then he says, Sarva Asraya Maya Mayam Aneka Adbhuta Prachuram Devam Dyotanatmakam Anantam. What is Anantam? There is a beautiful word he's using, Aparichinnam. There is no paricheda, there is no limitation on it. Desa Kala Vastu Paricheda Sunyam. That is what is Brahman. And here also is clearly mentioned, he is Ananta. There is in terms of time or space or Vastugata dosha, he is not Savayava, he is not limited, he is unlimited in terms of time, location, or space, and also his own, his own self. Is the particular material that he is. I mean, he is a non-material material. Anantam sarvata paricheda rahitam. So he is sarvata because there is no limitation. So he is infinite. Now let's look at the verse number 12. Now he is trying to compare this appearance of Bhagavan using certain upamas or similes, as they call it in English, okay, in literature. And these similes are of different kinds in Sanskrit, and we will have a bit of discussion on that, but I'll try to remain limited to what is required because we're not doing a literature class. Divi Surya Sahasrasya Bhavet Yoga Paduthita Yadi Bhasadrisi Sasyad Bhasas Tasya Mahatmanaha. He's now trying to say in the Antariksha, in the skies, there's a sun. But imagine if actually we can have thousands of suns appearing in the sky. Just fantasize, in case you can. Bhabet suns appearing in the sky. Just fantasize, in case you can. Bhabet yugapat uthita. If 1,000 suns or even more, innumerable suns appear in the sky at the same time. Of course, there are innumerable suns because they're all stars. But here the purpose is to say that if all the stars are very close to us, that they can appear as suns, if they all rise on the horizon at the same time. Yadi bhasadrishisha syad, and the light that will be there, imagine how illumined the whole sky will be, how much light it will be. It'll be intolerable, isn't it? We can't even look at the sun. Not all of us. There are certain yoga kriyas where they look and meditate on the sun in the midday. But without proper guru, you are not supposed to do all this. But there are certain practices of meditating on the sun, which you can destroy your eyes without proper guidance. So if you can think about that kind of light, that hundreds of millions of suns appear on the horizon, if you think about that light, this Bhagavan, bhasas tasya mahatmanaha, of that particular thing, that Bhagavan that is seeing, he had that light that was emerging out of him, which is comparable to thousands of suns appearing in the sky. That is how he's trying to mention. Ya punar bhagavato vishwarupasya bhas bhaha tasya upama uchyate. He's trying to find a comparison, comparability, where there is no object, or there is no reference which can be of standard, which can be used for finding a comparability of the luminosity of Bhagavan, luminosity of the divine presence. He's making a false attempt in order to drive home a point that there is nothing to compare with the incomparable God. Uchyate Divuti Dibyan Dibya Antarikshe. Okay? Divi Antarikshe तृतीयस्यां वा दिवि सूर्याणां सहस्रं सूर्यसहस्रं तस्य युगपत् उत्थितस्य युगपत् उत्थिता भाः सा यदि सदृशी स्यात्. If you can imagine that 1,000 suns appear in the sky, then the light of that combination of 1,000 stars or suns, तस्य महात्मनः विश्वरूपस्य एव भासो यदि वा न स्यात् ततोऽपि विश्वरूपस्य एव भा अतिरिच्यते इति अभिप्रायः. If there are 1,000 suns, it's not possible to find 1,000 suns, right? And if these 1,000 suns will have the light, then that light will also be kind of non-comparable to the light of Lord who is having Vishwarupa. And even if you cannot compare it, that is the only way I'm talking about it, because there's nothing as a reference or standard which you can use to explain to you. Okay, that is how he mentions. And if you look at Madhusudan, what does he say? Daivam ityuktam dibrunoti, he explains, expands. Why is it called Daivam, Dibyam, Ishwaram? Why is he mentioning that? Divi antarikhe suryanam sahasrasya aparimita surya samohasya. What is Surya Sahasra? It is essentially a countless number of suns appear in the sky, yugapat uditasya, if they all arise in the horizon at the same time. Yugapat uthita bhaha, and imagine the amount of light they will bring into the horizon. Prabha yadi bhavet, if you can think that kind of prabha or luminosity, tada sa tasya mahatmano vishwarupasya bhaso diktehe sadrashi tulya, then that light may be comparable to the Vishwarupa, one Devata who was standing in front of Arjuna. That is what Sanjay is narrating. Yadi syad, yadi va na syad, but if actually, that is not even comparable. Tatopi nunam Vishwarupasya eva ma atirichyate iti aham manne. So I think even if you cannot compare it, that is all. That is the particular atirichyate. So this is the extensive way, this is the only way I can explain to you the exalted luminosity which Arjuna was shown by Bhagavan. So this is Sanjay who is narrating. Aham manne anya tu upama nasti eva ityartha. There is no other way in which, there is no other comparability which I can bring into the conversation. Atra avidyamana adhyavasayad तद अभावेन उपमा भाव पराद अभूत उपमा रूप अयम अतिशयोक्ति उत्प्रेक्षा व्यज्यति सर्वथा निरूप निरूपमत्वम एव व्यनक्ति. So he's now bringing in the Kavya Sastra, and we will not get stuck there. There are there are different kind of alankars. Alankars are similes, and there is something called utpreksha. Utpreksha is where there is no comparison, there is no comparability. So I definitely, it is so, and I think it was like this. So whenever you're using these kinds of words in Kavya Sastra, there is called Utpreksha, and there is something called Atisayokti. It's like the girl was so sad that looking at the girl's sadness, the moon melted and committed suicide in the ocean, if I say so, because it was actually a pre-new moon night. I'm trying to describe a sad situation of a girl. The girl was very sad because of whatever reasons. And it is by the riverside, ocean side, contemplating why to live. I'm so sad. There's no one to understand what I'm passing through. And the moon is watching it. And the moon is kind of feeling so sad by sympathizing with the girl that it jumps into the ocean. Now, there's nothing truthful about it, isn't it? It's just one way of narrating it. Now, the sadness of the girl is so intense. How do I narrate it? There's no way I can do it. So I'm doing Atishayokti. These are ways in which, why is it all being brought in? And there is something called another Ubhayo Upama, Abhuta Upama. There is also another simile where there's no comparability. So why? Because Bhagavan is saying Nirupamatvam eva vyanakti. Bhagavan is Nirupama. Nirupama means what? There is no upama in him. He is not comparable with anything. Why he cannot be compared? Because Advaitavada. That's a simple thing. He is the one and only. There is no second with whom he can be compared. Because everything we see, all objects, all comparable things are part of his universe, part of this magical reality. He's creating it. Sankalpa Matrena. He's not working hard to do it. And therefore, he's Nirupama. And therefore, when we are referring to the Divine Mother, we say Nirupama. There's no Upama. She's incomparable. So when he's Bhagavan, we say Nirupama. The same Bhagavan or same divine self, if we make it a mother, divine mother, we'll say Nirupama. That is what is hinted here. That is what he's mentioning. Ubho yadi vyomni prithak prabhavu ityadivat. Okay, so he's given certain other, say for example, okay, so he's given certain other, say for example, just imagine if something can sort of flow in different directions, and there are different ways in which we can bring in extraordinary descriptions to capture a certain thing about which we want to talk about. And certain literary means or tools are being used to express our sense of wonder. That is what is the point here. And the sense of wonder he's experiencing is primarily because he's talking about Parameshwara and his Dibya Vishwarupa. That is how the verse number 12 comes to an end. And then तत्रैकस्तं जगत्कृष्णं प्रविभक्तमनेकधा अपश्यद्देवदेवस्य शरीरे पाण्डवस्तथा तदा. Then Sanjay is now telling his dear friend, I mean his king, Dhritarashtra. He's a helpless guy now, blinded. He's sitting quietly, anticipating that maybe somehow Duryodhana might manage to win the war. So he's telling him, Tatra ekastham, at one place. He's Vishwarupa, right? So he's vast universe. But he has got that Divya Rupa that he can experience the universal, infinite, myriad, multifarious presence of the Lord, the Supreme Lord, at one go, at one place. During one life, which takes millions of lives to even experience one iota of it, he is being able to see his infinite presence, experience the truth of his presence, infinite presence, beautiful, wonderful. And he's kind of bathing in that sense of wonder. Tatra ekastam jagat krishnam. That whole universe, that Vishwarupa, Krishnam, comprehensive, everything. Pravivaktam anekatha. And that particular divine presence of the Lord, which is one, becomes many. That we have been discussing. Bhagavan has mentioned that in chapter 7, 8, 9, right? That I'm the one thing that have become many. Mahatma Anekada Apasyad, he saw who? Pandava. Apasyad Deva Devasya Sarire. So he saw that Nana Vidhani Ascharyani, all that he sees in the body. Remember, there's a physical body there. So it's like, you remember children, I know now things have become much smarter, but there was this bioscope kind of thing, right? During fairs and all, they'll come, there'll be a box, there'll be those pinholes through which you will see, and he will be doing a slideshow. And he'll say, okay, now see Taj Mahal, now see this, now see that. The children in the villages where you will have this guy coming and showing it, they'll be super excited. Outsiders don't know what these boys are excited about, but that particular guy is changing. There'll be some slides, right? So he'll be doing that circle, and then the slides will be jumping one after the other. And the boys are very happy and they clap, and then they pay him 1 rupee or something for that show. That was about 20, 30 years back. Now it's not there. Similarly, here at one place, Arjuna is able to see Bhagavan's Vishwarupa. What others are watching, even what Sanjay will be seeing, he is getting a glimpse of it, but what the world is seeing, Arjuna is talking to Lord Krishna. They are two physical beings, limited beings for the outside world. But one of them, because of Divya Drishti, can see the Vishwarupa at one location. But the divine presence is non local, it has no locational limitation. It has no limitation on the time scale. It's only ever present. There is no past, no future. And there is no locale for that particular thing. And Arjuna, how is he being able to see it? Because he is limited in terms of time and space. Human consciousness is limited in terms of time and space. However, during meditation, we sometimes beat these limitations of time and space to get closer to the infinite presence of God. That is what is the secret mentioned here. It's through meditation. It's through meditation at a very high, refined level of our consciousness. When the consciousness drops its attractions or aversion vis-a-vis limited objects, limited sense perceptions, limited experiences, and expands the moment. What is the way to do, dusting or washing? Do you know the servicing of the mind? He has already given it the secret. The only way to service the mind is to use that particular, what do you call it? That washing liquid. That washing liquid is called mana nigraha. So don't allow the mind to go anywhere. Chitta vritti nirodha. When we drop all those thoughts, then the mind gets properly serviced. You spray your whole mind with what? A liquid called absence of thoughts. You spray that liquid called absence of thoughts, then the mind becomes refreshed. As we see, when we are in deep sleep, we get up, we feel very good. And if you can engineer it during meditation, so much better, right? That's what Bhagavan says. Tatrikastam jagat krishnam pravivakta anekadha pravivaktam anekadha apasya devadevasya devadevasya devanam deva devadevasya sarire pandavas tatha. He's now saying Pandava. He's trying to make Dhritarashtra a little jealous, isn't it? Because all these guys, who is he? He's basically a nephew of Dhritarashtra. He's saying, look, your son is so stupid. He's trying to fight with the Lord Krishna, whereas your other son, which is a nephew, you're in a way, certain way, your child, because you are also a parent of him, he is lucky enough to see Vishwarupa. It's like saying, where did your son get a seat? Okay, my son didn't go to do very well. He's trying to do maybe some funny subject in some correspondence courses or something. And your son, okay, my son has got a very good seat in some Ivy League or IIT or whatever. So that's how people talk about. So he's trying to sort of remind him that despite the fact that he has similar origin as us or you, look at his luck that he is able to have the Vishwarupa Darshana because of his own sadhana. Kincha tatra ekastamiti tatra ekasmane Vishwarupe. Ekasmin sthitam ekastham jagat krishnam pravivaktam anekadha. So what does he see there? Jagat krishnam pravivaktam anekadha. So what does he see there? What does he see? There is a description in the commentaries. In that particular body, he sees everything. Deva Pitru Manushyadi. He sees Devatas and all his forefathers. I told you he becomes a Trikaladarshi during that Vishwarupa Darshana. He sees his past generations also in the body of the Lord, because he's ever present, which means what? All our histories is part of him. He's ever present. Remember this. All our futures are in him. All our pasts are in him. We have a past and a future because we are limited in time. He doesn't have a past or a future. God, Parameshwara, is free of past and future. And he's saying, Deva Pitru Manushyadi Vedehi Apasyad Drishtavan Devadevasya Harihe Sarire Pandava Arjuna Stada. So Pandava Arjuna, your nephew, is able to see, oh Dhritarashtra, do you know all your forefathers are his forefathers, and he's being able to see all of them, which you cannot see because you don't have faith in the Lord. And then what he says, Madhusudana will try to expand a little. Yaha ekastam jagat krishnam pasya adya sacharacharam. Bhagavan had made a promise to Arjuna. Pasya adya sacharacharam. Charam cha acharam cha. Jada, jiva, varga, everything you see adya at one time, right now, and ekastham at one place in my body. You see everything. Bhagavat agyaptam api anubhutavan Arjuna. Ityaha tatra iti. Then he is being able to experience all that at one place. Ekastam ekatra sthitam jagat krishnam pravivaktam anekada deva pitru manushyadi nana prakarihi apasya deva devasya bhagavatah tatra vishwarupe sarire pandava arjuna tada vishwarupa asarya darshana dasayam. So that vishwarupa asarya darshana dasayam, that is the beautiful sentence there. He is in a spell right now, right? So just imagine certain times it happens that in psychiatry there is a word called transference. So there is a person who is depressed or he has some problems. He goes to a counselor and there's a discussion. Then slowly what happens is the psychologist or the counselor, if he's a very good one, skillful one, he allows the subject, which is the patient here, to sort of talk about himself. But when he starts to talk, he also starts listening to it, or she starts to listen to it. And there comes a moment slowly in this process that he unravels and he sees a lot of things about himself or herself, which he was aware of, but he didn't remember. And then there is this dangerous moment when everything suddenly rises up in your consciousness. And the counselor has to sort of come in and hold his hand to help him reconstruct his present situation and give him a direction. And that particular patient sort of rebuilds his storyline and gives himself that this is what I'm going to do, this is how I have to move forward. Because otherwise, he's in a perpetual state of a kind of lack of integrity, or kind of a difficult situation in a way. And he might develop different kind of proclivities. Sometimes he has projections onto the psychologist, and then he'll start attributing. He can do anything. So what Bhagavan is doing, just remember that Arjuna, and it happens that when you are doing a lot of pujas or you go to a good guru or a counselor or anything, suddenly you become under the spell of his grace of that guru or acharya, or sometimes it's a counselor. You suddenly reach a spell in which you have a sense of awareness. All your agony seems to go for those moments. And then you feel very quiet. And you don't know whether to accept it or not, but you feel very strange about what you're experiencing. And this is sometimes it's an engineered spiritual trance. Some gurus can do it if they are very kind and helpful and they have the skills and you have the dedication. Sometimes good counselors do it in a scientific way. They have also their own ways of doing it. Sometimes different rituals are also conducted, different pujas, where you can also reach that state. When you have a stalemate or some kind of a problem, you reach that state. In philosophy also, there is that moment of epiphany. Suddenly something reveals to you at a deeper level, as Sri Aurobindo keeps mentioning, that the truth descends to you. Here, our friend Arjuna is right before the Lord, and Lord is giving him that compassionate attention and is enabling him to recognize and take note of the infinite divine presence, which in one word is the source of countless wonders that even this mind cannot sustain. The mind can go mad because it doesn't have the ability to deal with the suddenly astonishing appearance of a vast, infinite, myriad, multiple, realities. At 1 second, suddenly it all appears. It doesn't know how to make sense of it, and that will go there. So he's saying that Vishwarupa Asarya Darshana Dasayam. Then he's seeing everything at one rupa. That is what Madhusudana says. That is verse number 13. And that is the last verse of Sanjaya. Tatasa Vismaya Vishto Hishtaruma Dhananjaya Pranamya Sirasa Devam Kritanjalira bhasata. Now, there is a beautiful thing he's mentioning. Arjuna doesn't crumble. He doesn't cry. He doesn't shout. Generally, you have, for example, if you are face to face this kind of a situation when they have, doing some kind of, there's some exorcists, right? And we have seen those movies. So they come and do some kind of spiritual activity where you are supposed to kind of unravel yourself to yourself, and then it's quite possible you see things or undergo certain psychological experiences that you cannot hold it. You shout, you get scared, you collapse, you start crying, you can hit your head against something, you might try to be restless or run away because your system isn't able to take that at that moment. None of that happens to him. He very quietly is responding to Bhagavan. Why? Because Bhagavan is not a counselor in the traditional sense, he is not a guru or an acharya. He is Param Brahman himself. So when he has given you the Divya Chakshu, he actually has given you the capacity, he has bestowed on you the ability to not only see that wonderful presence of the Lord, but also make sense of it. So Arjuna is very much in control. Why? Because he's not under the spell of a magic show. He's under the spell of God's grace. He's under the spell of God's blessings, with which he sees this infinite reality. And therefore he's saying, Tatasa Vismaya Visto. So he's kind of, he's overtaken by that sense of wonder. Krishna Romaha, his hair are kind of standing, because he's so excited. He's so wonderstruck, exalted, Dhananjaya. And why Dhananjaya word is there? He is a brave fighter. He had defeated several kings because they had stolen the cows of Yudhishthira before the Rajasriya Yajna. He defeated them and got all this gold and all and given it back to the Yudhishthira for the yaga. He did not take anything. He's a Paravairaki. Just imagine such a brave fighter, and yet mom says, share it. And mom doesn't know what to share. What is the diksha? He just quietly keeps quiet. He's the greatest fighter. He had fought with Lord Shiva, isn't it? He could have looked at all his brothers. They would have run away. Did do anything? No, because he is a Parama Bairaki. He's not supremely excited about having won over Draupadi in that Swayambara. And therefore, his Dhananjaya is a great soul. Pranamya Siryasa Devam, he bows down to the Lord. He falls flat. He has Dandavata Pranama. Kritanjali, Kritanjali Rabhasata. He sort of folds his hands and falls at the feet of the Lord. And then he begins to speak. That is what we'll sort of take up tomorrow. Now, let's just look at Sankara Bhashya, and Madhusudana will take tomorrow. Tatahiti tatastam drishtva, Bhagavantam drishtva. Saha Vismayena Avishta. He's sort of overtaken by a sense of wonder. Vismaya Avishta. Krishtani Romani Yasya. And all is, here kind of standing because he's so excited. So I am Krishna Roma. Okay. So Abhavat Dhananjaya. That Dhananjaya became, overcome by a great sense of exaltation, sense of wonder. He pranamya. He falls down. Prakarshena namanam kritva pravivyuta. He treats God, the Lord, as his own master. Pravibhuta becomes like a slave, his child. Sam Sirasa Devam Vishwarupa Dharam. This Deva, who is now appearing as Vishwarupa, he's carrying that Rupa. Krutanjali Namaskaratham. So he sort of, he folds his hand. Sampudikrita Hastaha. He folds his hand, son of Hasata. Uktavan. He speaks. And Arjuna, how he addresses the Lord, we'll take that up tomorrow, along with a bit of elaboration of this particular verse, which is there in Madhusudana. That is how we'll start Arjuna's, prayer to Bhagavan tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can ask. And I'm just trying to put an end to the YouTube right now.